Hi, Sam here at Model Chile, and here I have the Polarize Enterprise NX-01 refit model, 1:1000 scale. Now I've been inspired to build this after getting back into Enterprise. After all six series have recently come out on Netflix here in New Zealand. I've been going back over the old episodes and watching some of Enterprise for the first time actually. I never really gave it much of a chance when it first came out back in the day. So I've taken the opportunity to watch beyond season 1 and I'm actually quite enjoying it. So I've been inspired to go ahead and get this. I mean, I've always liked the NX-01 as a design. I know it had a lot of criticism when it was first revealed, but I've always liked it, and I have built an older version of this kit a few years ago, back when I wasn't really a modeler, so I didn't really have any of the tools or anything, so it was really basic, and I didn't really spend much time on it, so I thought I'd get this kit, and I'll actually build the old NX-01. I won't build the refit, but I may get another one of these and do the refit later on, but I just wanted to have a proper go at building the NX-01. And I've also ordered some of the extra decal set, the extra Aztec decals from eBay, so those should be here in a few days. And yeah, so it's actually been quite a good year for us long-time Star Trek fans. I mean, we've just had the release of Star Trek Beyond, which is excellent, by the way, and also news of Star Trek Discovery, which will also be on Netflix in well, over here it will be at least, which will be coming out early next year, so quite looking forward to that. But yeah, that's enough rambling. Let's get the box open and have a look at the kit. Okay, so we've got instruction sheet, new dome stand with a metal rod, clear parts, warp engines, the new secondary hull pieces, and just both halves of the main hull. Oh, and lovely set of decals. Even tempted to get another one for the to do the Columbia. Should be quite cool. And yeah, so what I'm going to do is approach this similar to how I build armoured vehicles, whereas because there's not many clear parts that need inserting before it goes together, or any portholes or anything, I'm just going to assemble the whole ship first and then paint it once completed. But there's a few bits that I'll have to paint first, such as the inner parts of the warp engines and the deflector dish. So here I've just painted the lower sensor dome in a pale, very pale yellow, which it seems to be that colour on the show, and masked that up with a bit of blue tack. And for the hull colour, I've done a bit of research, and it's a silvery dark greyish metal, so I'm going to be using gunmetal, and it's got a slight red shade to it apparently. So I've put in 10 parts gunmetal to 1 part copper, and that should it won't be very noticeable, but it will be there. Whereas the its sister ship Columbia had a slight bluish hue to it. Okay, so the warp engines have been attached, and I've cleaned up some of the areas around the blue clear parts that are masked, and the impulse engines, and it's been put on this really awesome pivoting stand, which I really love. I wish all models had stands like this, being able to put them in all sorts of different positions. Really handy. So now I'm just going to start painting some of the details and then start applying the decals. For some of the darker shaded areas, like the grid lines along the rim of the saucer, I'm just going to be using a Vallejo night grey wash. So they'll just sit in the lines, and then when it's dry I can just use a bit of water to wipe away any excess that's splashed over. Okay, so that's all the detail paint done. So all the windows have been painted, all the navigation lights and extra bits and pieces there. So normally the next step would be the decals, but as I mentioned before, the extra Aztec set has arrived from Acreation Models. It's bought on eBay, and so it's just one big sheet of Aztecs, and it's all one decal. So what I'm going to have to do is cut out a slice of panelling that I want, just do it in small chunks to make it fit well and to lessen the chance of air bubbles, because I'll just be working my way around carving out wedges, and hopefully that should go down quite nicely. I've put on a gloss coat, so now that's ready to be applied. Okay, so the underside of Aztecs is pretty much done. As you can see there, it's a really nice subtle panelling there, not too overbearing or doesn't have too much contrast. I think it strikes just the right balance between being subtle and not disappearing. So I'm pretty happy with that so far. This also had quite a heavy dose of microsol just to get some of the decals to fit into all these bumps and grooves. And it also required quite a bit of scoring along these deep lines just to cut the decal so it's got room to sink into the gaps when it's softening up with the solution. So just before I finish the top, I've got, as you can see here, I've done it in alternate stages. So because you're putting together quite large panels of decals, you really don't want to push them up against each other when they're still wet. So I've cut out the sections and wedges and then done them in alternating stages, and then so when they're dry, now I can start putting them in, filling in the gaps, and I won't be pushing against wet decals. So these this particular set of decals is quite fast acting, so it just needs a quick dip in the water there, and then just put on some tissue just to let it soften up. And I pretty much just use the tweezers and a cotton bud here. So wet that up and then get the right section. Dab a bit of water on here first. And you can probably see from here, this hasn't had a microsol solution yet, so we've got a few areas down here where it's not quite conformed to the panel lines. Well, this is dry, but it still needs a little bit of scoring, and then apply some microsol to get it to settle down a bit. And I think this is probably about done by now. So carefully lay it in place and then just gently pull it off a little bit with the cotton bud and then grab it at the top of the tweezers. Now I can pull it off like that. Now just gently moving it, coaxing it into position, pushing it up against the panels, and squeezing out any air or water bubbles trapped underneath. And that's that one done. So now I just need to work my way around and fill in the rest of the gaps. Okay, so all the Aztecs have finally been put in place. And then another few coats of microsol. And then I left it to dry for about a day. And then put on a very light coat of Tamiya Clear, just to seal them all in. So now it's ready for the next coat of decals from the kit. And there's quite a few in here that I won't be using. A lot of these are for the refit. And Columbia, of course. But yeah, so I'll start applying those now. Well, I did plan on recording me applying some of the last decals, but turns out the decals had other ideas. They were just really difficult to place. They split apart into multiple pieces. There was one decal that just shattered. Didn't just split apart, it actually broke into little shards that just went flying everywhere. It was really weird. Some of the worst decals I've had to work with in a long time, so it was pretty frustrating end to what was otherwise a really enjoyable build, but I managed to get them on in the end, and I only lost one in the process, which was a really big single decal that covered the floor of this loading bay. Just broke apart into more pieces than I could count, so I just discarded that and replaced it with some detail from another kit. It's not accurate, but there's something in there at least. And then it took about 2 days of microsol application just to get them to sync, or just start to sink into some of the panel lines. And I ended up having to push them in just with a bit of light pressure just to get them to sink in. And eventually it just started to work. So again, that was another really weird thing that I ran into. But it has been really cold here, really cold winter, and we've had various nights of sub-zero temperatures, and I don't really heat this model room that much, so I don't know if that contributed to the performance of the decals or not, but yeah, it's just really frustrating to work with. So luckily there weren't that many of them, and luckily the Aztec decals, which the ship's pretty much covered in, were just absolutely flawless. Didn't have a single breakage. They all fit perfectly, and they all conformed to the panel lines with microsol. So I'm really happy with how they came out. And yeah, so once I applied the last decals, and then I just gave it another coat of Tamiya clear, and then a couple of final coats of flat clear just to bring down the shininess. So it's got a nice satin sheen to it now. And it does specifically say on here that you shouldn't use this directly on decals and stickers. I have tried it out before straight on decals, and it's really messed them up. So it's always a good idea to give the model a good coat in gloss clear first, and then apply the flat. And it hasn't affected the decals at all, so yeah, so I'm quite happy with how it's turned out in general. So quite a small kit, but it's just bursting with detail. Mostly thanks to the Aztec decals, I think. Came out really well. And yeah, so have a quick look at the other side. So as I've said before, really happy with the how the decals look, the Aztecs look. They're not too they don't stand out too much, and they're nice and subtle enough to see the closer in you get. And I think it really adds a lot to this model. So it's definitely worth it if you're thinking of building this or its bigger sister or brother. And yeah, so let me know what you think. If you've built this or are planning to build it, leave a comment below. Let me know how you got on, if you've used any of the Aztec decals. These ones were by Acreation Models. I think there's another brand that does them. They may look slightly different, I'm not sure. And I do know I skipped out quite a few steps in making this video. Wasn't really that planned out, to be honest, but yeah, so I did skip ahead quite a bit. So apologies for that if you were confused about how I did something or what colours I used. So if you'd like to know, just leave a comment below, and I'll be happy to answer. And I shall try and be a bit more organised for the next video and try and get every single major step that I do to build these models. I have had quite a few comments on various techniques or questions on techniques that I use, so I'll hopefully include those in some videos I've got planned in the near future. And yeah, so I hope that this has been informative or entertaining at least. And again, just let me know what you think. And good feedback or bad feedback, it's all welcome. I did have one comment on a video that requested that I use a bit less music, which I've done on the last video and on this video as well, so always happy to change it up a bit and see what works and what doesn't work. So it's a continuing evolution of build videos, really. And yeah, so thanks again for watching. And until next time, take care.